In the fjords of western Norway, cliffs climb 1,400 meters straight out of the sea, then fall another 500 beneath it. This is the coastline the rest of the world copied to define what a fjord even is. A country rich enough to move mountains lives here, and instead, it chose to slip through them. When geologists needed a place to define the word fjord, they came here. In 2005, UNESCO inscribed two of these valleys, Geirangerfjord and Nærøyfjord, as the type locality of the fjord landscape, the original that every other fjord on Earth is measured against. The walls rise glacier to 1,400 meters above the sea, roughly 4,600 feet, and the water beneath them plunges another 500 meters into the dark. The two fjords sit 120 kilometers apart, yet share one heritage listing, and the protected zone around them covers 122,000 hectares. This is not a viewpoint. It is a whole landscape held under protection. Stand at the water's edge, and the first thing that reaches you is the absence of noise. Only meltwater somewhere overhead, a gull, the soft knock of a boat against a jetty. For anyone who has spent years inside a city that never fully goes quiet, the effect is almost physical, the sense of finally being able to draw a full breath. And there is a second thing, harder to name at first. Nothing here has been flattened to make room for people. The fishing villages, the houses, the narrow roads all follow the shape the stone and the water already had. Where most nations would have leveled a shelf to build on, the people who settled these shores bent their lives around the rock instead. The impression left on a first-time visitor is strange and precise, that nothing here was ever conquered. Nærøyfjord runs so tight it feels less like a bay than a corridor. At its narrowest, it is only about 250 meters across, walled in by peaks that reach roughly 1,760 meters overhead. The surface lies flat as poured glass, a pale jade green, and the mountains fold down into their own reflection until it is hard to say where the cliff ends and the water begins. And there is a glacier, a little further inland, that survives on something so backward it should not exist at all. Jostedalsbreen is the largest glacier on the European mainland. It sprawls across roughly 487 square kilometers and runs up to 600 meters thick, an inland sea of ancient ice sitting on the roof of the country. Most people assume a glacier this size is a monument to cold, held together by deep freezing temperatures. It is not. Jostedalsbreen endures because of snowfall, not because of frost. Year after year, enormous amounts of snow pile onto its upper reaches, compress under their own weight, and feed the ice faster than the lower edges melt away. Take away the snow and the cold alone could never hold it. That single fact quietly rewrites how you see the place. Even the ice that looks permanent here is not a fortress of frost, but a fragile balance, decided entirely by sky and weather rather than by anything human. The glacier does not endure by force. It endures by being fed, on terms it does not control. That balance is tilting. Recent research published in the journal The Cryosphere warns that Europe's largest mainland glacier could lose up to half its mass by the year 2100 as the climate warms. Something that has ground its way across these valleys for thousands of years is now being measured in the language of loss. Its future counted in decades instead of ages. For now, though, it can still be touched. On the Jostedalsbreen arm, an official tongue of Jostedalsbreen that reaches down toward the valley floor. Guided groups walk out onto a maze of blue crevasses and step inside caves carved into the ice itself. Under boots, the surface groans and cracks with a low, deep sound, the settling of snow that fell before recorded history. But ice is only one way the far north bends daily life. Light is another. And it shapes existence here in a way that is far harder to picture. The dark does not fall evenly across Norway. In Longyearbyen, far up in the Arctic, the sun stays below the horizon for about 4 months, from mid-November to the end of January. Tromsø sits in that darkness for roughly 6 weeks, the Lofoten Islands for about 4. In Bodo, on the shortest day of the year, the sun clears the horizon for only 50 minutes before sliding away again. To an outsider, that sounds like an ordeal. To the people who live it, the polar night is not an absence of light. It is a different kind of light entirely. Around 1 or 2 in the afternoon each day, the sky gives back a faint remainder of the sun that never quite rises. It reflects off the sea and off the snow, and for a while, the entire landscape turns a deep, translucent blue, clear as glass. Norwegians call it the blue hour. It is not darkness at all, but a slow, glowing twilight, and it has shaped how people in the far north have lived for something close to 10,000 years. Then the light comes back in a different form. The northern lights are forecast to reach their strongest intensity in 11 years across 2024 to 2026, and the best season runs from late September to late March. Most people picture the aurora at the dead of winter, but the peaks actually fall around March and April, then again in September and October, with the sharpest displays between 11 at night and 2 in the morning. For those hours, the polar night stops being something to survive and becomes something to stand under in silence. The sound of winter here is not silence, though. In the fjords around Skjervøy, from November into January, vast shoals of herring crowd into the narrow inlets, and behind them come the hunters. Hundreds of orcas and humpback whales drive into the fjords to feed, so many, so close, that this is among the densest whale-watching grounds anywhere on the planet. The breath of a whale carries across the cold water before you ever see it. All of it, the ice, the blue hour, the whales, leads to one larger question. Why would a country wealthy enough to reshape any of this choose, again and again, not to? Here is the thread that runs through everything. Norway has the money and the engineering to level mountains and drain valleys if it wanted to. And yet, over and over, it has chosen to thread its technology into the landscape rather than press it down on top. That single choice, to bend rather than to dominate, is the quiet reason the country looks the way it does. The beauty that feels almost unreal is not something left over despite the engineering. It is the engineering. The clearest proof of it runs straight through a mountain. The Lærdal Tunnel is the longest road tunnel in the world, about 24.5 kilometers bored through solid rock between Oslo and Bergen. A driver spends around 20 minutes underground inside it, long enough to unsettle anyone. So the engineers did something almost no one else would have thought worth the cost. They built 3 vast caverns along the route, washed in blue and gold light designed to mimic a sunrise, spaced out so that a driver surfaces into false dawn 3 times before reaching the far side. They carved through the rock, but they refused to let the rock crush the person inside it. The instinct behind almost every great work of engineering is conquest, a straight concrete pipe forced through an obstacle. Here it ran the other way. They designed the tunnel so that the human being and the mountain could both, in a sense, keep breathing inside the stone. The same way of thinking built something even stranger on the frozen island of Svalbard. The Global Seed Vault is an insurance policy for the end of the world, a chamber driven deep into an icy mountain to store seeds from every corner of the planet. It keeps them at -18 degrees Celsius, roughly 0 Fahrenheit, using the natural permafrost to stay cold even if the power fails. Rather than build an artificial freezer that would burn energy forever, they borrowed the cold that was already in the mountain. Protection, not domination. And that same instinct runs through every watt of electricity the country uses. Almost all of Norway's electricity comes from renewable sources, and the overwhelming majority of it from water. As of 2024, the country runs, more or less entirely, on the rivers and glacier melt pouring down off its own mountains. It is one of the very few places on Earth where an entire modern nation is kept alive by falling water. No smokestacks on the skyline, no coastline given over to a power plant. Just the same gradient that makes the fjords so dramatic, quietly turned into current. This is the thesis again, this time in the wiring of ordinary life. Instead of laying a fossil fuel plant across the landscape, Norway borrowed the force the terrain already had, the steepness, the rainfall, the melt, and let the country's own shape generate its power. Threading technology into nature rather than stacking it on top at the scale of a national grid. It carries into the roads too. Norway closed out 2025 with somewhere around 96 to 97% of all new cars sold being fully electric, the highest share anywhere in the world. Electric vehicles now outnumber the diesel cars still left on its roads. The streets of Oslo run quiet in a way that surprises visitors. The usual engine roar of a capital thinned down to the hum of tires on wet asphalt. And here sits one of the country's softer contradictions. A nation that grew wealthy exporting oil and gas has moved its own people into electric cars faster than anyone on the planet. The oil is for selling, the water is for living. What Norway does with the fortune that oil built is a question that waits until later. First, there is the matter of how these mountains are understood by the people who live among them, because to them, the stone was never just geology. On the island of Torgatan stands a mountain with a hole punched clean through its peak, a natural tunnel wide enough to walk through, with daylight showing at the far end. According to geologists, it was carved near the end of the last ice age, some 10,000 years ago, by ice and water grinding through a weak seam in the rock. But that is not the story the coast has told for centuries. According to legend, The hole was made by an arrow, loosed by a troll, chasing a young woman across the sky, the shaft passing straight through the mountain as the sun rose and turned the whole hunt to stone. Both explanations are kept. Neither is asked to win. Higher up, on the Dovrefjell Plateau, a herd of musk oxen still walks the tundra, shaggy survivors from the ice age that had long since vanished from these mountains. Norwegians brought them back from Greenland in a series of releases between 1947 and 1953, and today, around 240 of them roam the plateau, with roughly 50 calves born each year. The animals were never tamed or fenced. A creature was returned to the landscape it belonged in and then left alone to be wild. The naming runs on into the water. At Geiranger Fjord, the Seven Sisters waterfall drops 7 separate ribbons down the cliff at once. Legend says the 7 are sisters dancing, while a lone waterfall across the fjord, called the Suder, keeps trying and failing to court them. A fact of hydrology becomes a small story with characters and longing. It is there in the mountains themselves, too. The great range of peaks in the interior is called Jotunheimen, the home of the giants. Notice the pattern. The Norwegians named their landscape after trolls, after dancing sisters, after giants, rather than after conquerors or kings. It is a relationship, not a conquest, a way of telling stories alongside nature instead of stamping ownership across it. And that same refusal to force the land shows up most vividly in a town that spent half of every year with no sun at all. Rjukan lies at the bottom of a narrow valley, hemmed in so tightly by mountains that direct sunlight cannot reach it for about 6 months of the year, from late September to the middle of March. A whole town, thousands of people living half the year in the shadow of the peaks around them. The valley floor stays in a cold gray dusk, while the slopes above catch the light the town cannot have. The idea of fixing it is more than a century old. Back in 1913, Sam Eide, the engineer who founded the industrial giant Norsk Hydro, dreamed of using mirrors to bounce sunlight down into the valley. The technology of his day could not do it, and the dream was set aside for 100 years. Then, in 2013, an artist named Martin Anderson made it real. He installed 3 enormous mirrors, called heliostats, high on the mountainside, controlled by computer to turn and follow the sun across the sky. Together they throw a patch of warm light, roughly 600 square meters across, down into the town square. When the mirrors cast their first beam onto the square in October 2013, the people of Rjukan came out and stood together inside the ring of light. Some carried folding chairs out to sit and sun themselves in it. For a moment, an entire town gathered to share a single patch of sunlight that the mountains had kept from them for almost 100 years. It is no accident that this town became the birthplace of that idea. Rjukan, together with Notodden, was inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2015 for the cluster of hydroelectric plants, factories and company towns that Sam Eide and Norsk Hydro built here in the early 20th century. This is the place where the force of a mountain waterfall was first turned into electricity and then into fertilizer drawn out of the very nitrogen in the air. And so, faced with a mountain that stole their sun, the people of Rejuken did not drill through it or move the town. They bent the sunlight itself around the peak. The engineering served a human need, nothing grander than the wish to feel warm light on your face in winter. And it stands as the purest emblem of the whole national instinct. That same instinct also built places that leave visitors breathless, right at the edge of a drop. Some of Norway's most famous places are nothing but the raw rock, left as it is, with people invited to stand on it. Preikestolen, the pulpit rock, is a granite slab that juts out 604 meters above Lysefjorden, its top almost perfectly flat and only about 25 meters square. Around 300,000 people made the climb to stand on it in 2024, which puts it among the most visited natural sites in the country. There is no railing, only the flat stone, the drop, and the strange lightness in the legs that comes from standing at the lip of 600 meters of air. Further inland, Trolltunga, the troll's tongue, is stranger still. It is a thin shelf of rock that sticks straight out from the cliff face at 1,126 meters. Its tip hanging about 700 meters above the lake of Ringedalsvatnet. Reaching it is a serious undertaking, a 27-kilometer round trip that takes 10 to 12 hours and climbs 1,100 meters of ascent. You earn the edge with a full day on foot. What is remarkable is how recent all this fame is. Trolltunga was almost unknown a decade ago, drawing only about 500 hikers in 2009. By 2016, the number had leapt to roughly 80,000 a year, a 160-fold rise in under a decade. A single ledge of stone went from anonymous to national symbol, carried there almost entirely by photographs shared online. And where Norway had to build to reach a place, it still refused to flatten it. The Flåm Railway runs 20.2 kilometers and climbs 863.5 meters. One stretch of track is pitched at 55 per mil, that is 5.5%, a gradient of 1 in 18, not the 55% it is sometimes wrongly called. It is among the steepest standard gauge railways in the world, threading through 20 tunnels, 18 of them dug by hand, and it was completed in 1940. The line clings to the wall of the valley rather than blasting the mountain flat. But not all of Norway's beauty is carved from stone. Some of it rose out of ashes. On the night of the 23rd of January 1904, a fire tore through the wooden town of Ålesund and burned almost all of it to the ground. Around 850 buildings were lost, and thousands of people were left without homes in the middle of the Arctic winter. And yet, by the records that survive, only a single person died. A whole town reduced to embers in one night, and against every expectation, nearly everyone walked out of it alive. What happened next says something about the country. Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany, who had spent summers along this coast and loved the little town, sent ships loaded with emergency supplies. And Ålesund was rebuilt entirely, not in wood again, but in stone and brick. In the flowing Art Nouveau style, then sweeping Europe, the style Norwegians call Jugendstil. In about 3 years, the burned town rose again as one of the most complete and unified Art Nouveau townscapes anywhere on the continent. The disaster did not just get repaired, it got answered with beauty. The country's memory reaches into darker corners too. At Vardø, on the far northeastern coast, the 17th century saw one of the harshest witch trials in Northern Europe. 91 people, most of them women, some of them Sami, were condemned, blamed for conjuring the storms that drowned local fishermen. Norway did not bury that history. At Vardø now stands the Stilneset Memorial, designed by the architect Peter Zumthor with the artist Louise Bourgeois, built to hold the memory of all 91 of the accused, out at the edge of the sea where they died. There is a pattern even here. A country that raises a monument to the victims of its own cruelty and rebuilds a burned city more beautiful than before is practicing another form of not conquering. It bows its head before its own losses and mistakes, and then it goes on. A nation that could face all of that and keep its footing had to become wealthy somehow. And the answer begins with something practical, the question of what it actually takes to live here at all. Wanting to live in Norway and being allowed to stay are two very different things. For permanent residents, most people, those on work permits or with family ties to a Norwegian or Nordic citizen, need to have lived in the country legally and continuously for 3 years. Those who came through protection or asylum, or who joined family in that situation, need 5. And the door is not swinging wider. Across 2024 and 2025, the Immigration Authority tightened the financial self-sufficiency requirements for permanent residents, a clear signal that Norway is making the path harder to walk, not easier. Then there is a fact that catches many Westerners off guard. Norway is not a member of the European Union. It never joined. It belongs instead to the European Economic Area and to the Schengen Zone, which means citizens of EU and EEA countries can move and work here almost freely. Everyone from outside that bloc, Americans, Britons after Brexit, Australians, Canadians, must apply for a work permit like any other foreign national. The blue passport does not open this door the way people assume. And once you are in, there is the matter of tax. Income tax here is not the single crushing rate of legend. It is built in layers, a flat 22% base, and then a bracket tax stacked on top that climbs through 5 steps, from 1.7% up to 17.8% at the very top band. For 2026, that top band applies to income above roughly 1.5 million kroner a year. The weight comes on gradually, not all at once. That is the price of the bargain, the tax that pays for the healthcare, the schools, and the pensions that make the slower life here possible. Which raises the obvious question of where the rest of the money comes from, the wealth behind all that welfare, and how a country this rich manages not to spend it. The answer is the single largest pile of money any nation has ever owned, and the strange rule it wrote to stop itself from touching it. Norway's sovereign wealth fund, formerly the Government Pension Fund Global, known to everyone as the Oil Fund, reached 21,268 billion kroner by the end of 2025, roughly 1.9 trillion US dollars. The figures come from the fund's own manager, NBIM. Published in January 2026. The fund owns close to 1.5% of every publicly listed share on the planet. A country of about 5.5 million people holds a piece of nearly every major company on Earth. What is remarkable is not the size of the fortune, but the restraint around it. Almost every krone of oil and gas revenue is poured into this long-term fund rather than spent straight through the national budget. An oil nation built itself a break. Under a budgetary rule the Norwegians call handlingsregelen, the government may draw only around the fund's expected real return, roughly 3% a year, leaving the principal untouched for the generations still to come. There is a cultural logic underneath the financial one, and it has a name. Janteloven, the law of Jante, is an unwritten social code that the novelist Axel Sandemos named in a 1933 book set in a fictional town called Jante. It runs to 10 rules. The first of which is, roughly, do not think you are anyone special. And it means that one of the richest populations on the planet quietly forbids itself from behaving rich, cutting against the ordinary instinct to flaunt what you have. There is a very jaunty footnote from this year too. The World Happiness Report for 2026, drawn from surveys taken in 2025, ranks Norway 7th in the world with a score of 7.26. It is no longer even the happiest country in the Nordic region, having handed that crown to Finland at 7.74. And a nation this wealthy sits calmly in 7th place, entirely at peace with not being number one. It is the same logic as the tunnel with its false sunrise and the town with its borrowed sun. A people with the power to dominate, choosing not to use it, only this time the thing they refuse to conquer is one another. And perhaps that restraint, more than the fjords or the fortune, is what makes this country feel unreal. So return to the question the fjords first asked. Why does a country wealthy enough to reshape any of this keep choosing not to? Look back at everything along the way. The fjords left unflattened, the glacier that lives on snow rather than force, the tunnel with a sunrise built inside it, the mirrors that bent the sun around a mountain, the oil fund that puts a brake on its own spending. The law of Jante that will not let anyone stand above the rest. They are all one answer. This place is not beautiful to the point of feeling unreal, in spite of the fact that it refused to conquer. It is beautiful because of it. The restraint is the reason the landscape is still here to take your breath away. That refusal is even written into law. Norway's right to roam, allemannsretten, set down in the Outdoor Recreation Act of 1957, gives anyone at all the right to walk, ski, swim, and camp on uncultivated land without asking the landowner's permission. A country that leaves its nature alone went one step further and made the freedom to be inside that nature a right belonging to everyone. And the choice runs deeper than stone or law or money. It lives in the way Norwegians define themselves. There is a word for it, friluftsliv, meaning open-air life. The playwright Henrik Ibsen coined it back in the 1850s to capture the value of living in step with nature for the good of the body and the mind. A whole people treat being out in the wild without harming it, not as a weekend hobby, but as a part of who they are. In a world that has learned to measure progress by how much of nature we can force to give way, Norway quietly offers a different measure. That the deepest strength is not the power to move a mountain, but the choice to let it stand.